An Unexpected Future by A-Series on AO3. Episode 3, Chapter 3. A Nostalgic Spider-Man. Eraserhead still had hair. Five wasn't sure why that was his first thought when he managed to make it to the hero's hospital room. There were other, more important details to be focused on, like the bandage and the cast that seemed to cover his entire upper half of his body, or the tubes and dripping bag that helped him breathe and rest. He hadn't even consciously considered whether or not Eraserhead would have hair before entering the room. Just that the presence of it falling over the pillow around his head, framing the bandages on his face, seemed implausible and borderline silly. He actually found himself letting out a giggle as he thought, and he quickly covered his mouth with his hand and turned away from the sight. Instead, Five made his way to the window of the room, leaning against the windowsill with his good arm and looking down at the hospital parking lot. In some ways, it was just like a parking lot back home. It was filled with cars and people were lost in their own little worlds. But the people themselves were all sorts of shapes and sizes, and the billboard across the street moved, featuring a clip of All Might smiling wide and flexing for the camera. So, this is the future, huh? Five says quietly, but out loud. He always worked best when he could voice his thoughts with someone, like his sister, Vanya. And Eraserhead wasn't about to wake up anytime soon with those injuries. Gotta admit, this wasn't what I was expecting. The city doesn't look all that much different from where I grew up. Where are the hoverboards? Claus would call this a ripoff. As expected, there was not a response. Or maybe he wouldn't, Five admitted, letting his head rest against the window pane. I saw your class, briefly, before the ambulance came. They seem like good kids. Klaus would be thrilled to meet other people like him, like us. Ben, too. I wonder what he would think of that boy with the webbed arms. Maybe he wouldn't feel so alone if he'd been born now instead of then. Five sighed. I missed them already. Ben, Vanya, my siblings, even the old man. A little bit. I feel like he would have been able to read that Nedzu guy better than I did. Or at least stood up to him better. I don't get what Nedzu wants with me, but it's certainly not altruism, like he pretends it is. But he does seem like my best bet for getting out of here. Him and UA. Five pushed himself off the sill and made his way to Eraserhead's side. So, looks like we're stuck with each other. At least for a while. The machines filled the silence with beeps and whirls, as they kept the man alive. You impressed me, you know? Five said, actually looking at Eraserhead this time. You are really outnumbered, and if your scarf is anything to go by, your quirk is something similar to my brother's Diego's. I know how much work he goes into moving as well as you did in that fight. That's why when I saw you go down... His voice cracked on the final word. Five found himself oddly choked up as he remembered the blood pooling around Eraserhead's twisted and shattered limbs. He wasn't sure why. It wasn't like he or his siblings were strangers to mutated bodies. Save for Vanya. They all hurt people. Killed people. But those were bad guys. Thieves and murderers who didn't care if normal people got in their way. Eraserhead was a teacher, doing his best to protect his students from a literal gang of villains. He didn't deserve all this. Deserve, huh? Five should already know better than to cling to such naive ideals. Fate didn't care who was a good or bad person, who it dawdled out in its punishments. Let's just say I'm glad you made it. Five finished, smiling grimly, entirely for his own benefit. Not wanting to talk anymore, Five pulled over the visitor's chair and sat down. He could leave, he supposed, but he didn't particularly want it to go back to his empty hospital room either. So he slouched in the chair, but found that he couldn't cross his arms around his cast. And apparently, future hospitals had just as shitty eye-searing lights as ever. So he shifted, first attempting to sit in the chair properly with his back straight, like his dad liked, and quickly discarded the idea in favor of turning to his side and resting his cast on the back of the fold-out chair. He then rested his forehead against the cast. While it wasn't a soft pillow, it at least kept the light out of his eyes as he rested. Nedzu was lucky he caught Hisashi when he was returning to the hospital with an overnight bag for himself, and Shota, instead of earlier when Hisashi was frantically trying to check up on his critically injured partner. Rather than exploding his boss's eardrums with a frustrated scream or holding him up, Hisashi was able to calmly listen to the principal explain about the little time traveler that saved Shota's students. He was lighter on details than Hisashi would have normally liked, but Nezu stressed that it was imperative that Yue kept this boy safe until he was able to return to his own time, which was something Hisashi was all for. He was sure the kid wanted to get back home, but he didn't like Nezu dropping hints about how the kid was already fond of Shota, and how it would be best if someone on staff took him in. Shota barely made it out of the USJ alive. They weren't in a position to take in a kin. Khan had a spare room in his flat, and Ishoyama was great with kids, especially with the sports festival coming up. Assuming there even was one, Hisashi didn't have the time to take care of both his partner and... Hisashi froze as he opened the door to his partner's room. The time-traveling boy in question sat by Shota's side, sprung limply, and knobbily joining on the full display in the boy's presence shorts, and an absolute tight t-shirt from the Lost and Found. It probably needed to be that big to fit over the cast, entirely encasing his right arm that the boy had been using as a pillow. The boy jumped at the sound of the door opening, though, and tried to quickly and subtly wipe his drool on his sleeve as he scrambled up to attention, sharp brown eyes zeroed in on Hisashi. "Well, hey there, little listener," Hisashi greeted, with a fostered cheer. Glad he hadn't changed out of his present mic costume yet. It was easier to smile this way. "Wasn't expecting any visitors, but I'm not complaining. I'm Present Mike. What's your name?" The boy eyed the hand Hisashi was waving with, and the blag slumped over Hisashi's shoulder, before meeting Hisashi's eyes through Hisashi's sunglasses. "Five. Though I imagined you already knew that. Or you'll be busy throwing me out about now." "Five," Hisashi repeated, blinking. "Five what?" "Guessing I overestimated you." And wow, the kid already had the "you're an idiot" Hisashi stare down pat. "That's my name, Five Hargreeves." "Five isn't a name, it's a number," Hisashi insisted. "English is your native language, right?" "And Japanese is yours, isn't it?" The boy shot back, and surprisingly, grammatically, if a little outdated, Japanese. He flattened his wispy brown hair and straightened what he could of the shirt and drew himself up to his not so full height. "Like I said, I am Hargreaves, number 5. You're the hero with the shouting quirk who showed up with the rest of the UA backup. Are you close friends with Eraserhead?" "You can say that," Hisashi answered, eversly, having no trouble switching languages. He walked over and stood next to Shota. "He's my best friend. I appreciate you keeping an eye out for him and his class." "I just happened to be in the area," Hargreaves said dismissively, standing far too straight for someone his age, even with his hands in his pockets. "Any other hero would have done the same." Hisashi raised a skeptical brow at him. "Aren't you like 12? 13? The boy corrected, and oh gosh, he even raised his chin, trying to make himself look bigger than he was. "And so what?" Hisashi had to fight to keep himself from cooing. Instead, he held up his hands and said, "My bad, little listener, but aren't you just a little too young to be calling yourself a hero? What else would you call someone that goes out and fights crime when there's trouble? Hargreaves says, without a hint of irony. Suddenly, the situation doesn't seem as cute. Oi, oi, Hisashi stated, aware of the cold sweat on the back of his neck, switching back to English just to make sure the kid understood what he was saying. Are you saying you're some sort of vigilante? Ah, I guess there is a difference between the two now. Hargreaves mused. Back in my own time, you didn't need the government's permission to use your quirk, and there certainly wasn't any sort of license you had to get to help people. We just did it, like good Samaritans. Weren't there any heroes you could rely on instead? Hisashi asked, knowing full well that even as he grasped for straws, there are communities that get too easily overlooked by the hero system. You really don't get it, do you? Hargreaves marveled, tilting his head as he reappraised Hisashi. He huffed a laugh, which turned into a bitter smile. There were no heroes. We were the first with quirks, all born on the same day, and raised by a man who, potentially, knew when he saw it. Who cares if a bank robber has a gun when you could teleport out of the way, or brainwash him to shoot his friend? Who cares if you're a kid when you could literally rip someone in half, or throw a knife between someone's eyes from around the corner? We have this saying, with great power comes great responsibility. We're the ones born with this power, and we have a duty to use it. And we must have done a good job, right? After all, you're here. Hisashi felt his blood boiling under his skin, and it was only his many years in front of media that let him keep his protective rage off his face. Instead, he smoothed out the creases in his brow and kneeled in front of the boy, placing a hand on his shoulder. You've got a pretty heroic spirit, I'll give you that. But that man should have never put that kind of pressure on you or your siblings. Before being heroes, you should be children, and then choose this life when you're adults and ready for this kind of choice, if you decide to do it at all. I promise that as long as you're here, you won't need to fight anymore. Hargreaves slapped away Hisashi's hand. Don't make promises you can't keep. Now if you'll excuse me. Without waiting for a response, Hargreaves vanished before Hisashi's eyes. Hisashi stared at an empty spot where Hargreaves had been, and slowly closed his outstretched hand, letting it fall to his side. Letting out a heavy sigh, he stood again, only to collapse into the chair Hargreaves had vacated. What a kid! A kid who needed just as much saving as those who escaped from villains. Hisashi removed his sunglasses to rub at his eyes, letting the frames fall to his lap, and turned to look at Shota. I don't know about you, but I like him. It is so weird to just be 3 chapters in and we don't have anything on Izuku. I'm sorry. I'm normally what I normally read is Izuku centric. There you go. Fan fictions, right? So it's really weird for me to read a fanfic where it's not Izuku centric. It is so weird. Ooh, okay. Also, love how in his mind, Hisashi's like, yes, my partner. Oh yeah, my best friend. Because I don't think he wants to sit down and explain to the kid what queer platonic means. And I don't blame you, I don't. I had to sit through hours of just figuring out what queer platonic was. And ooh, okay, that was interesting. But as I was saying, this is very interesting. So clearly, Five has gotten a connection with this person. And I think the reason why he's connected to Aizawa is because Aizawa reminds him of one of his siblings, which, if I remember correctly, his name is Ben? No, it's not Ben. It was Diego. There you go. I remember my lore. It was Diego specifically. And it was very interesting because Hargreaves, right, Five, thinks that, Shota's quirk has to do with telekinesis, which is Diego's quirk. That's what Diego's quirk was. Specifically the to be able to move metal stuff specifically. So that has a specific name. It's not telekinesis. It's a specific name. But sorry to break it to you, his little, scarf thingy is just I still believe that he has part, what's it called? Telekinesis. It is in my head canon that Aizawa has part telekinesis. Alright? Alright. But we don't talk about it. Okay, we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. But anyways. Yeah, this is very interesting. I have a feeling that they're gonna end up adopting him. I mean, it's literally in the fanfic. Come on. It's literally written in the tags. It is what it is. Also, a nostalgic Spider-Man. I love that. I love that. I love these titles. I don't understand Carrot and a Stick, though. That's the only one I don't understand. I understand a nostalgic Spider-Man. Because, some people could, say that, what's it called? What's his face? Aizawa is kind of Spider-Man-ish with his little scarf, and the way specifically in fanfictions how they portray him leaping through building thanks to his scarf. I mean, you could say that Deku is a type of Spider-Man as well, while, Sarah is too, but like, you get what I mean. But yeah, I hope we're all enjoying this new fanfic. I think, those who know Umbrella Academy, hi. Those who don't, hi. Hi, welcome. Don't worry, I don't know much. I just know that, it's been a while since I watched it, but all I know is that each one has a power. I kind of know their powers, and I kind of know their names. Kind of, clearly. My favorite is Claus because he's chaotic, and did I mention he's chaotic? I love him. They're like such a cool character. I love them so much, but yeah. And then I think, yeah, that was my favorite. 5 is another one of my favorite. I think 5 and Claus, they're my favorites. 5 for their snarky remarks. Claus because they're Claus. Oh wait, Claus is gay. Oh my god. Wait, yeah. They're a homo. Sorry. My brain is processing. Anyways, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.